يا نفس إن لم تظفري لا تجزعي.
A perfect storm is gathering right now over the global markets. In this analysis, we are going to break down the unprecedented events that just unfolded this past weekend, and, more importantly, what they signal for the incredibly turbulent weeks ahead.
Right now, the entire financial world is holding its breath. And for good reason. What we've just witnessed was one of the most historic weekends in decades, one that has absolutely set the stage for a period of extreme, almost chaotic volatility. The ripples from what just happened, well, they're going to be felt in every single portfolio.
You know, it all comes down to two seismic shocks, two events that are shaking the very foundations of the global market as we know it. The first, it's a geopolitical gambit with massive, and I mean massive, economic consequences. President Trump is making good on his long-standing threats. So, starting February 1st, a 10% tariff is going to be slapped on all imports from the UK, Germany, France, and 5 other major EU nations. And the demand is just as audacious as the tariff itself. A deal for the purchase of Greenland.
Okay, so at the exact same time, another shock is hitting the financial system right at its core. Fed Chair Jerome Powell has just confirmed that the Department of Justice has launched a full-blown criminal investigation into the Federal Reserve itself. Now, Powell's calling it a political move, a way to seize control of interest rate policy, but honestly, it doesn't matter what he calls it. An action like this against the central bank, it's completely unprecedented.
And you have to understand the pressure on Europe is escalating on a very fixed timeline. This isn't an open-ended threat. The 10% tariffs, that's just the start. If no deal is reached for Greenland, they jump to a crippling 25% in June. The clock is officially ticking, and the potential economic damage here is just massive.
So with this level of instability, this kind of chaos, what happens? Capital starts searching for safety. And as you'd predict, we're seeing a massive, desperate flight into the classic safe havens, precious metals. Gold is now trading near $4,600 an ounce. And look, while the tariffs are definitely a factor, it's the investigation into the Fed that's the real rocket fuel here. This is eroding fundamental trust in the dollar itself. I fully expect an attack on the 4650 mark in the coming week.
Now silver. Silver is on an even more explosive tear. It just smashed right through the $90 barrier. What we're witnessing is a combination of massive speculation and, more importantly, a profound distrust in fiat currencies. You know, the money backed by government decree rather than anything physical. This is a vote of no confidence.
We're even seeing some incredibly bold predictions out there, like this one from Robert Kiyosaki. He's calling for $107 as early as this Monday. But let's be real for a second. A word of caution is definitely needed here. The market is clearly overheated. A brief, sharp pullback is entirely possible before it continues its march toward that $100 mark.
All right, let's shift focus for a moment. Let's talk about the industrial side of things, because this Greenland Hammer, as I'm calling it, is sending some really complex shockwaves through essential commodities like oil and copper.
Oil is caught in this powerful paradox. Brent crude is sitting right around $64, and it's being pulled in two completely opposing directions. On one hand, you've got these tariffs threatening global growth, which should drive oil consumption and prices down. But on the other hand, rising tensions with Iran are creating a real risk of supply disruptions, and that's putting a floor under the price. The result is probably going to be wild sideways volatility, a trader's nightmare.
Now, copper's story, it really hinges on one single deciding factor. Yeah, the tariff news is a short-term negative for sure, but the real driver, the thing that's going to move the needle, is China's Q4 GDP data, which is due this week. If those numbers come in strong, and expectations are sitting around 4.8%, fueled by their insane AI infrastructure boom, well, the price of copper could absolutely explode, completely overpowering any fears about these tariffs.
So amid all of this chaos, this geopolitical madness and market fear, there is one sector that seems to be ignoring it almost completely. It's just charting its own powerful course straight forward.
And that sector is uranium. The price is holding incredibly stable above $80 a pound, with a clear, undeniable trend towards 90. So the big question is why? Why is it proving so resilient to all this global chaos?
Well, the answer lies in its unique fundamentals. This story isn't about geopolitical games. It's about raw, unstoppable demand. You've got big tech giants, think Microsoft, Amazon.
They require staggering amounts of power for their AI data centers, and they are turning to nuclear to get it. This new, massive demand is hitting an already extremely tight global supply. Uranium's story is completely independent of the political turmoil in Washington, which frankly makes it my top pick for 2026.
So let's put it all together. Let's look forward. What are the key events that you absolutely must watch in the week ahead?
Okay, first, Monday is a U.S. holiday. Now, why does that matter? It means thin liquidity. Fewer buyers, fewer sellers. That can lead to some seriously erratic, unpredictable price swings. Then, on Tuesday, the World Economic Forum kicks off in Davos, where President Trump is expected to arrive with a record delegation. And of course, as we just discussed, the big one for industrial metals, China's Q4 GDP data dropping sometime this week.
So here is the bottom line. Here's the strategic summary. For gold and for uranium, the outlook is clearly bullish. My strategy? Use any pullbacks as buying opportunities. For silver, while it's also bullish, the extreme volatility warrants some caution. Don't chase it. And for oil and copper, the strategy is simple. Patience. Just wait for that China data before you make any significant moves.
And this all brings us to the final and most crucial question. In a world of cascading crises, with politics and finance in absolute turmoil, which domino will be the next to fall? Stay vigilant and secure your positions. We will be watching very, very closely.
يا نفس إن لم تظفري لا تجزعي